Hello, and welcome to CSCI 4, Introduction to Programming Concepts and Methodologies. My name is Matt Cervantes, and I will be your instructor for the course. So in this video, I'm going to be spending most of my time walking us through the course syllabus. I'm going to do that so that you have a good idea of how the course is organized, sort of what the expectations are for you as a student. And then basically after that, I'll be doing some introductions, talking a little bit about who I am, kind of giving you some background there. And then I'll also kind of finish off things with showing us like week to week what you can expect in the course going forward. Before I jump into kind of all of that, though, I do have a few kind of high level things that I want to just sort of mention right at the beginning of this video, just so that folks know about them. The first one is that obviously you're watching this lecture on YouTube. So I just want to like point it out right now that all of my lectures will be hosted in YouTube on my YouTube channel. That's just where I put all of my lectures. And the second thing is that my lectures are actually the primary way that I deliver all of the course content. So basically, I don't have a book. I'll mention that later, but pretty much everything you're going to need to know about how to operate in the class and all of the concepts and how to do the work is going to be taught through my lectures. So I don't have a whole bunch of supplementary like take-home assignments or like things that I PDFs or whatever that I pass out. And I want to make sure that I'm clear about that up front because I know a lot of people when they take online classes or even hybrid classes like this one is, there might be some expectation that you don't necessarily have to watch the lectures. You can just sort of read like a book or something else, and that's how you would learn it. And I'm just trying to make it clear right up front that the lectures in my course are really not optional. If you don't watch all the lectures, the likelihood of you being successful in the class is slim to none. And the main reason for that is not only am I going to introduce the concepts during those lectures, but also I will demonstrate the manner in which I want you to go about performing a lot of the algorithms or implementing those concepts that I'm talking about during my lectures to demonstrate to me that you understand. And you really won't be able to get that anywhere else except for through the lectures. So you're going to have to watch all of them. Um, that said, I do want to point out too that like the lectures are important, and but the nice thing here is that you can get through them pretty fast. I strongly recommend that you watch all of my lectures at least 1.5, if not double speed. It's pretty easy to do in YouTube. I've been teaching online for quite a few years, and I've noticed that I'm usually pretty easy to understand or very understandable, let's put it that way, even at double speed. So that can turn my lectures into a much shorter experience and you can still get everything you need. And obviously you'll be able to rewatch the lectures as many times as you want because they are recordings that you can just watch on YouTube. The last thing I do want to mention is the length of time of my lectures. So the time is going to be probably somewhere between an hour and an hour and a half for every lecture. So just let you know right now, like that's kind of what you're going to be expected to watch every week. Now, I only post one lecture per week, so you only have to kind of get that situated. You only have to deal with an hour and a half, but once, not twice a week. And that's because I'm trying to kind of mush what would normally be about a 50-minute lecture twice a week into basically just one recording. And so my hope is that works out better for you. Okay. So I just want to make sure that's clear right up front. The next thing I wanted to kind of bowl into is, I guess, just some basic introductions. I already said my name, Matt Cervantes. I'm pretty informal about how people address me. So if obviously you're going to meet me during our lab time, but like, in office hours, or if you just see me wandering around on campus, I'm pretty casual. You can call me Matt. That's what I kind of prefer to go by. But if you want to call me Professor or Mr. Cervantes, that's fine too. And I've been a teacher at the college for, I guess, about 7 years now. I have a bachelor's degree in computer science from Chico State. I have a master's degree in entertainment technology from Carnegie Mellon University. And I've been a professional software developer for probably coming up on 20 years now. I only up until maybe like about a year ago, I kind of phased out a lot of my consulting work that I've been doing on the side. Teaching is my full-time job, but I've spent the vast majority of my career as a professional software developer. And I say that because I want to make sure I emphasize that a lot of the things that I talk about in this class and all of my programming classes are Not really just stuff that I read out of a book, but stuff that I've actually done professionally for many years. And so sometimes I will try to emphasize certain things or show how to go about doing something in a certain way. And that's coming from my experience too. So my hope is that might lend a little credence to the things I'm saying. Okay, well, with that all said, I think I'm just going to go ahead and jump straight into the syllabus. Like I said, my lectures tend to be around an hour and a half in length. I'm going to endeavor to make this a shorter one because I know you're all just in love with the syllabus. Be a little bit of sarcasm there, but it is important information. I want you to understand it. I want to make sure that it's clear about what the expectations are, but I'm not going to try to drone on for too long. So let's see what I can do. So obviously here's our Canvas shell. This is the syllabus page inside of Canvas. You can see this wonderful graphic that I made. So when you're in Canvas and you want to identify the course, you just look for this picture and you found your way there. We'll mosey on down. So it's a 3-unit class. This is a description from the catalog. I'm not going to read that, but that's our description for the class. This class transfers to the CSU and UC system. These are the student learning outcomes for the course. If you don't know what a student learning outcome is, basically they are sort of like from my perspective, like the bare minimum of what the course must cover in order for it to articulate to other colleges. So what that basically means is that if this course, lots of colleges will offer equivalent courses. So there is an equivalent to this course at most other colleges, both at the CSU, UC, and the other community colleges. And the way that they figure out whether or not, CSCI 4 at Butte College is the same as ComSci 1 or whatever at another college is they look at these SLOs. And so that's really kind of the main usefulness they have in the college system, is that way of sort of figuring out, hey, is this the same class as another class? For your benefit, I'm not really sure what else the other utility it has for you other than outlining a few of the things that we'll definitely be talking about in the class. I tend to do these things and several more things. So just, buckle up for that, I guess. Let's see here, course section information. So this is just kind of the basic information about our class. I already mentioned, and you should be aware that you signed up for a hybrid class. If you've never taken a hybrid course modality before, then I'll just quickly describe that. So pretty much most computer science classes, and actually this is true in a lot of STEM classes, science, technology, math, engineering classes, is that they split up the lecture and the lab portion. So there's a lecture portion of the class and there's a lab portion of the class. And so traditionally, if you were like doing just a regular in-person class, both the lecture and the lab would be in person, and you would meet for like an hour for like maybe a lecture, and then you maybe would have like an hour of lab that you met with either that same day or maybe it was scheduled on a different day. So that's just how lecture labs work in general. So a hybrid class is actually where the lecture portion is taught in a different modality than the lab portion. And so for us, that's what makes this a hybrid, is that the lecture portion of this class is going to be online. Right, so that's the online component, and that's why all of my lectures will be recorded and available to you in YouTube so that you can just watch them online whenever you have time to do it. It's very convenient for you. But the lab portion of our course is not online. That is an in-person experience, and I'll talk a little bit more about it here in a little bit. But there is, I absolutely like need people to come to lab. I'm kind of mandating you come to lab because that's going to be when I administer the quizzes for the class. And so again, I'll talk more about it later, but just so you know, like this is when our lab is scheduled to meet, which is in MC 125 every Tuesday from 9:30 to 10:45 a.m. And so I do have an expectation that people will be there during that time, if for no other reason than just taking the quiz. But it's also a good opportunity for you to really get help with the work for the class. And my hope is that I might have some more activities for us to do and other discussion things we can do during our lab time. So just so you know that is sort of the way the class is set up. Then again, here's my name again. This also is talking about how you can get a hold of me. I do have both my Canvas inbox is listed as the preferred way to get a hold of me, and that is absolutely true. I also have my traditional Butte College email address listed here, but I'm just going to let you know right now, I check my Canvas inbox way more often than I check my Butte College email, and that's because Canvas inbox, really the only people who really are sending me messages in there are my students. In my traditional email, I get email from all kinds of places, from the college, from sometimes from students, but like just the college inundates me with messages. And so I like a way to be able to answer my students quicker than and not have it get lost in the noise of my normal email. So please, if you need to reach out to me, use the Canvas inbox. It's by far the better way. Okay, moseying on down. Let's go ahead and take a look at the office hours. So I have a whole page devoted to this. I'm just going to open it up in a new tab. And as you can see here, I will have, oh, this didn't get updated for some reason. Oh, well, okay, I will update this, but this is actually inaccurate. My office hours are actually going to be on Monday and Wednesday from, I believe, 1:30 to 2:30. And then on Tuesday, it will be from noon to 2:30. Okay, so I will update this. I apologize that I didn't check this before I started my recording. This is, I think, from a previous semester, so whoops on my part, I guess. All of my office hours will be held in person, though, and that's just because I've noticed that most people don't like to do online office hours. We, of course, will be meeting during Tuesday anyway for our lab. So actually, I've only scheduled a little bit of time after our lab ends. And then when another block of office hours will begin. So for your class in particular, you'll have a lot of access to me on Tuesday. Let's just put it that way. And I do have a few more other office hours available, scheduled office hours on Mondays and Wednesdays. If for whatever reason you can't meet with me during those times, and again, I will update this. Sorry, it's not that right now. You can always get a hold of me for additional office hours by just reaching out to me through like Canvas inbox and letting me know of a day and time that would work better for you. I get that not everyone can go to scheduled office hours. No matter what days and times I pick, it's not going to work for everybody. So that's just kind of my caveat. Like that's how I can get to people who need access to me for whatever reason. Okay, so you do have that even if you can't come to the scheduled office hours. All right, moving away from that. Let's mosey on down to the course materials. So the very first thing we're gonna jump into is by far the most kind of like important, I would say, part of this class, which is like kind of like what language are we going to be using, and what is like the technical setup you're going to need for getting the work done in this class. So I have a whole page devoted to that. It's called the environment. Or the development environment setup page. You can click right here to get to it. Again, I'm just going to open it in another tab. And this page is really going to just describe, pretty much everything you need to know about getting a development environment set up. First things first, what language are we using? We'll be using the Python programming language to demonstrate all of the concepts in the class. And I'm going to say this right now because, and you'll hear me say it several times over in the course, but this is the language I'm going to use to demonstrate the concepts in the class. But by no stretch of the imagination should you believe that this is a Python class. It is not a class. I'm not focused on teaching you Python. It is not my goals for you to like become some sort of like Python developer. Every computer science class is really meant to demonstrate the concepts of the class, and the language is really just sort of like whatever we chose to like help kind of illustrate that. Many students consider Python to be an easier language, I think is why the college traditionally uses this language for this class, since it's an introductory class. So I'm fine with going along with that. Python's an extremely popular language in industry and even for people who just work on it as sort of like a hobby. But again, I'm not teaching it to like, so you'll become like a Python expert. The focus of the class absolutely will be on these fundamental concepts. And those concepts are going to be applicable to pretty much any language you're going to ever really use. So it kind of doesn't matter what language we pick. So when all that said, we'll go ahead and jump into sort of the two different kind of paradigms that you might have for setting up a development environment to complete that work in the class. The first is really just to install everything on a local computer that you have access to. This is by far the most kind of, I don't want to say popular necessarily. It probably is the most popular way, certainly with professionals, because it allows you to have the most control over the environment. You can choose how you configure everything. Like you're kind of in total control. Even in today's times, that is still the dominant way that professional software developers set up a development environment for themselves. But in an academic setting, that might not be true. And then there are other there are actual professionals now who are drifting further and further into the second option, which is the using some sort of an online platform that will allow you to sort of like emulate a development environment through a browser, but the actual environment is hosted somewhere else, like on a, some sort of cloud service somewhere. So those are the sort of the two flavors of setting up your dev space. I'm going to walk through both of those options here in a minute. Before I jump into that, though, I do want to quickly mention the version of Python that we will all be using in the class. So Python has been around for many, many, many years. It comes out with new versions all the time, and new versions oftentimes introduce new functionality. Sometimes they break old functionality, and I'm not trying to keep up with that. So I have picked a very specific version of Python, and it's actually kind of an older version of Python. I've done that very deliberately because, again, not really a Python class. I just wanted a version that would be able to demonstrate those core concepts easily, and basically remove all the noise of like the modern features that I don't really particularly care about for the purposes of this class. So that version will be Python 3.7.9. Again, so if you've done any Python development on your own, you're probably looking at that and being like, wow, that's a really old version. It is a very old version. And so the next thing I'm going to do is talk to you about how you can get that installed on a machine, and that way you can get it all set up and ready to go, so you can do the work in the class as again, you're going to see me doing things. And it's important to have that version, and I'll just emphasize this now, because that is what I'm going to evaluate all the work that you give me against. So if you do work in a different version of Python, which uses features that aren't available in that version, I'm going to use Python version 3.7.9 to grade all your work. If I can't get your program to run because you did something in a different version, you're going to end up with a bad grade. So just like make sure you got the right thing installed or configured on your dev space. All right, so first setup option here will be the personal computer setup. Again, this is if you have a local computer that you can just install everything onto, computer that you probably own and have regular access to. This would be my strong recommendation. If you have this as an available choice to you, I would say this is probably the best way to go about doing the work in the class. So I have a whole like kind of paragraph here written about how to do this. I would say you really kind of have two choices. Depending on what your kind of end goal here is. If you're interested in doing Python development beyond just what's in this class, then I kind of have a way that I would suggest doing this. If you're kind of like, I think I'm only ever going to do this one thing and I'm never going to do anything else, in that situation, I would say the path of least resistance for you is to use this link I have right here, which is the default installer from the official Python website. And if you click on that here, I'll just go ahead and open that up in another tab. That'll just take you straight over to Python 3.7.9 off of the official Python website. You can come on down here and you can do the installation. To see here, here's the installation packages for Mac, Windows, and I suppose if you just want to get the tarball, that'd be more for like a Linux user. So this is a perfectly valid way to do it, and this will absolutely install 3.7.9 directly onto your computer, and that will be the default version of Python installed on your machine. Okay. Now the reason I wouldn't recommend that if you're interested in doing any other kind of Python development is because, again, I am using an older version of the language, and once you've installed a version of Python on your machine, it actually is kind of tricky to then put other versions on there. And having multiple versions of Python on your machine is actually extremely common because, like I said, the language does change often, and lots of times projects are kind of built off of a particular version, and then to be able to use that project, maybe you have to like download that version of Python to run it. And if you already have a version, you get into these sort of conflict issues. So it can be a big mess. So to get around that, there's actually a tool that's been around for a while, and a lot of developers use this to help manage all of the different Python environments they could potentially be running on their machine. And that tool is called PyEnv or PyEnv. I have a link to it right here. And actually, this is what I would recommend if you're willing to do it. I would recommend this as the way that you install you install PYENV on your machine, and then use that to actually do the installation of Python 3.7.9. And the reason for that is that PYENV will let you basically manage as many different versions of Python on your machine as you possibly could want, right? So if you just want to have the one for our class, it'll do that. If you want to have the one for our class and then 3 other ones, you totally can, right? And it's what you're going to see me doing in all of the videos and all of the lectures for the class. So it's a pretty nice little tool. And if you're interested in doing that, I actually also have walkthrough videos here. So if you're on a Windows-based machine, I have a whole video walkthrough here that shows how to install, configure, and use PYENV to install Python versions on your machine. It's a little bit of a long video. I apologize, but it's pretty thorough, walks you through the whole bit. I also made a separate video for people who are on Mac. So again, if you're on a Mac and you also want to use PYENV to configure your Python development, I would say this is a good video. I also show you how you can use it with VS Code, which is an extremely popular text editor that you're going to see me using all semester long for actually writing the code. So these would be my recommendations. Again, if you want kind of the easy path and you don't want to have to, you're like, I'll never do this ever again, you could just install it straight from here and it'll just do like a regular installer and it'll probably work just fine. But these would be a more thorough and frankly, you'll have more control. I also have some references here for folks who are running on Linux. There are tons of Linux distros, so I obviously can't make a video for every single one of those. Honestly, if you're running a Linux distribution, you probably don't need my help installing Python. In fact, you almost certainly already have Python installed on your machine somewhere, because it would be weird on a Linux box to not have that. In addition to the interpreter itself, though, that's literally just the interpreter. The Python interpreter is what we're kind of talking about here. You're also going to need a text editor. And I don't really care what particular text editor you use. You're going to see me using Visual Studio Code all semester long, and that's the one that was called VS Code up here, so it's kind of the same name. It is arguably the most popular text editor on the market today, has been for, I'm going to go out here and say maybe like 10 years now. It's really kind of just been the go-to move for most people. All of these text editors I have listed are free, right? Python itself is also a free installation. You don't have to pay for it at all. And you're welcome to use any text editor you like. Again, if you just want to follow along with what I'm doing, you can just set up, use Visual Studio Code. And if you follow along with these videos, they will also show you how to install and use Visual Studio Code with your PYENV setup as well. Okay, but these other options are also good. They've been around for a long time. Sublime Text has been around for a really long time. Lapsy is kind of cool because it's kind of like the open source version of Visual Studio Code. Notepad++ is a very just Windows specific one. NeoVim is sort of the new kid on the block. This is if NeoVim and Vim are if you want to feel better than everybody else, because it's a pretty steep learning curve to learn Vim or NeoVim. But if you can, you can become a very proficient programmer. But I would only tackle those if you have a lot of extra time to devote to it. Okay, so that's sort of the installing everything on your local machine sort of path, if you will. If for whatever reason you don't want to or you can't install Python on your local machine, then I have a couple other options. And there might be multiple reasons why you pick this path. It could be that you're like, I don't want to have to install it. Maybe you don't have a machine available to you all the time that you own and you can install things on. Another really good reason why you might want to pick this, in fact, you should pick this option, is if the only computer you have available to you to do the work in this class is a Chromebook, then I would strongly encourage you to do the online development option. Chromebooks are not really designed to have things installed on them and then run locally on the actual machine itself. They're meant to be done through a browser. So that would be another one where I would say you should use this. If that's the only computer you have, then this is the choice for you. I have 2 options available here. These are just my recommendations for ways to set up a development environment online. Between the 2, I would say GitHub Codespaces is by far the better choice. Not necessarily because it's inherently better than Google Cloud Shell. I just don't have a ton of experience with Google Cloud Shell. I've used it a couple times. I vetted it a few years ago. I've every once in a while I poke my head in there just to make sure it's still working. And it does seem to be a perfectly viable way to do it. But again, it's not as robust in my opinion as Codespaces is. And the other reason I would say GitHub Codespaces is the better choice here is that if you have any inkling to do software development at all, then you're going to want eventually to have a GitHub account, because GitHub, if you're not familiar with it, is the world's largest open source platform for like open source software projects. Right, so it hosts just tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of projects, open source projects, and indeed people also use it for just doing their private projects. So it is a really popular, and at this point I would say just like required account for you to have if you're a software developer, because it allows you to sort of share your code and have a good space to kind of like do that kind of work. CodeSpaces is a product that's built on top of GitHub that basically will emulate an entire development environment that looks pretty much identical to what you would see in Visual Studio Code. And that's not by surprise because Visual Studio Code is owned by Microsoft and GitHub is also owned by Microsoft. So yeah, shockingly, they made their code spaces look exactly like Visual Studio Code. In fact, it literally says, I think, Visual Studio Code in it. My plan is to eventually make a video to kind of walk through how to set that up in CodeSpaces. I haven't had a chance to do that yet, so my hope is that I will be doing that shortly after our class begins. So look for that, and if not, I'm sure I'll be meeting with folks in the lab, and I can also show you how to set up your GitHub and your CodeSpace setup from there as well. I also have some videos from other on my YouTube channel that do a lot of the same steps. So lots of resources to get you started on that if you need to go down that path. You're going to see me writing code all semester. That's what this whole little blurb at the bottom here is. I'm just letting you know that all of the code you're going to see me doing during my lectures is on a local machine. So it's on my local machine with VS Code and PyEnv, and that's how I demo everything. So if you want to follow along with me, that's kind of like, that would be the way to do it. But again, you're welcome to use whatever text editor you would like. Okay, that was probably the longest one we're going to be in. Let's mosey on back to the syllabus. The next course material that I want to mention is Piazza. Now, Piazza is that you actually are going to have a required video that you have to watch that explains Piazza in way more detail than I'm going to do right now, so I'm not going to bother jumping into that too much. Suffice to say that it is a question and answer tool. So again, this is an online class because there is that online component to it. Even though we will meet in a lab, we're only meeting for basically an hour every week. And there's going to be questions. You're absolutely going to have questions, and you're going to run into problems, and things are going to happen throughout the semester that you're going to need help with. And so Piazza is kind of my answer to that. And I use it in pretty much every programming class I offer. And it's a way for students to basically have a public, forum to ask any kind of question that you like. And then I and other students in the class can answer those questions in a public space where everyone can see everything that's going on there. So it's a really fantastic tool for getting help from folks in the class, people who are going through the same stuff as you. You can have discussions there, and I can, mark when things are good answers or bad or whatever. So like it's a really fantastic tool. You're going to see me push it a lot. If you ask questions, like if you send me a message in Canvas inbox, and it's about the curriculum, you're going to see me probably just be like, you need to put this in Piazza because you're likely not the only person who's asking that question and needs the answer. So anyways, you're going to watch a whole video on it. I have a whole page devoted to how to use it properly. I go through it in the video. So this is something that you're going to encounter more of, but you would have already received an email before, hopefully, or at the same time you got the video link for this lecture that's telling you how to sign up for Piazza. Again, it's a free tool, doesn't cost you anything extra to use. So, get ready to use some Piazza. Okay. I don't have a book. I think I mentioned that earlier, but I do use online references. So the primary way that you're going to learn all the material in the class, again, is through my lectures. But I do post up usually like every week in the modules. You'll see like a helpful resources page that has a bunch of links to various other websites that are basically talking about the same concepts that I introduced in a given week. And so that's another way that you can get like kind of extra information and, maybe just hear it from a different angle. And those are meant to sort of supplement my lecture. So I do have those, and those are just free websites. Um, If you are a person who likes to read from a book or likes to learn from a book, again, I don't teach out of a book. I don't reference a book at all in any of my lectures. You're never going to see me say turn to chapter 3 or whatever. But if you are somebody who just enjoys using a book for a reference, I do have a free reference book that I make available right here. It's a nice one. You can just, in fact, here, I'll open this guy up in another tab, right? And it's called A Bite of Python. And basically, it is just an online book, right? That has here, we can talk about functions right here. So like that basically just explains how Python works. It is very focused on Python, so kind of different from my angle, which is more computer science oriented. This one is much more focused on just sort of like this is how Python works. But it is going to talk about and go over a lot of the same exact concepts that I'm going to do. So if you're interested in having a book, this is a perfectly good one. I've looked it through and it's got some good stuff in there. This link will take you over to a page that kind of talks about some of the other software that the college makes available to you. So like Office 365, Adobe. You won't be really needing those per se in this class, other than if you wanted to use maybe the O365 for a Word document, you could do Word online. I do have materials where you'll end up having to like download a Word doc and then edit it and make edits, so that might be useful to you. But I provide this link there just in case you're not familiar with where that is. In fact, I'll click on it. Why not? The college just redid their website, so everything's a little different. But yeah, you can just click on this and it'll give you the information on how to install things if you need to. And then this sort of is just a little kind of letting you know right now that this is obviously it's a computer science class. It's a hybrid class, so there's an online component to it. And so there is an expectation that you have access to a computer, regular access to a computer. So you're definitely going to need that. If you don't have regular access to a computer, and the only time you're ever going to see a computer is during our like hour-long lab once a week, this is going to be a really, really, really hard class for you. So I'm trying to be upfront about that, that like you definitely are going to need to have access to a computer on a regular basis to complete the work in the class. And I can't like I really am not going to be able to make an exception for somebody who that's not true for. You signed up for an online computer science class, like you need to have a computer. Okay, communication expectation. So there's kind of two ways here. When I'm pushing information to you, it's always going to be through Canvas. Okay, so if I need to make an announcement to the class, and you'll likely get an announcement from me at least twice a week. Once will be whenever I publish new material that's going to be, you know, like new like assignments and quizzes and whatnot. That'll come, an announcement will come through in Canvas for that. And then I usually send like a little reminder announcement like midweek to remind everybody, hey, if you haven't done the work, you know, do it again. So all of that kind of communication will come through Canvas. And by default, Canvas's announcement system will forward those to your student email. So that's another place that you should regularly be checking for information from me and probably all your other instructors. Now, this second part here is talking about instead of me sending information to you, but more the other way around. When you need to reach out to me, or you feel like you should reach out to me, I sort of have a two-tiered approach to what you should do in what circumstance, right? So for the very first one here is like for all curriculum-based discussion, Piazza is the preferred system. And I already kind of touched on this a minute ago when I talked about what Piazza was. But basically, if you have the majority of the kind of questions that you're going to ask, so which are going to be like, you know, I'm running into a problem with this assignment, or I don't understand what I'm supposed to be doing, or when is this due, or I don't know, like anything that is curricular, right? Anything that has to do with the stuff that we're learning in the class together. Pretty much anything that you have related to that, you should put it in Piazza. Piazza is the way to go with that, and that's again because you know, you're almost certainly not the only person running into that problem. And you putting it in Piazza means that you will benefit from an answer, but that means other people will also benefit from that answer. And indeed, if you're having a problem, Piazza is the first place you should look because there's a good chance that somebody else already asked this question, it's already been answered, and you can just get your answer straight away right there, right? So that's sort of the main go-to place for posting questions about like sort of things happening in the class. It's almost always going to end up being Piazza. The only time that's not true is if you have questions or comments or concerns that are unrelated to the curriculum, right? So if you have a question that has nothing to do really with the curriculum specifically, and it's more like just about you specifically, that would be a good time to reach out to me through Canvas inbox. And so I have a few examples here of things that might like fall into that category. So like again, if you need to talk to me about or let me know about a personal matter because that's happening in your life that's making it so maybe you can't come to lab one day or something, that's a Canvas inbox. You have a question about a grade you got. Okay, that's something that's for you specifically. Canvas inbox. Or if you want to come and talk to me about career advice, Canvas inbox, right? So there are some things that are not curricular. I'm just trying to make that distinction, right, between when you should reach out to me through Canvas and when you should reach out to me through inbox. I do check my Canvas inbox very regularly, but I do ask that you wait for at least 48 hours to get a response. Sometimes I will also, in Piazza, purposefully not post up an immediate answer in hopes that a student might answer it because I think that's a good learning opportunity for folks as well. In fact, I even make mention of that, I think right here. Yeah, it's not because I didn't see it, it's because I want someone else to answer. If you reach out to me through traditional email, but you use something other than your student email, I almost certainly won't respond to it. And that's because I have no way to verify that that's you, right? So if you are going to use traditional email, again, I wouldn't recommend that. But if you were, definitely don't use like a Gmail account or something that's not the student email because I straight up won't even answer it. In fact, I probably will just get filtered out of my inbox. I stopped checking email and communications and stuff at around 5 every day. I try my best to sort of just step away from the computer at 5. Try my best is definitely what I actually it is an attempt. I don't always succeed, but it's a good habit for me and probably a good habit for everyone to try to step away if you can. Here's the grading scale. This is the same grading scale you've probably had in your entire life in school, so no different here. This is how all of your grades will be calculated. And then here's the actual breakdown of how I calculate your overall grade. And so I use a weighted average grading system. If you're unfamiliar with what that is, it just means that I have categories of work and that each category is worth an overall percentage of your grade. So for instance, the heavy hitter in our class is the programming projects. Okay, so I will be giving out 4 programming projects. There's four. In the entire semester, there was four projects, and they make up 40% of your grade. So you can kind of do the simple math there. Every project is worth 10% of your overall grade. That's a lot, right? So definitely don't want to skimp on the projects. Like the projects are a big deal. It's one of the most valuable ways for me to assess whether or not you understand the material. They are cumulative. So like your very first project will likely be the easiest project you do all semester, and then the final project will likely be the hardest thing you do all semester because it will incorporate all the things you've learned throughout the whole class. Okay, so definitely want to pay attention to those. Those are a big deal for your grade. Assignments are pretty much all the stuff that's not a programming project and not a quiz, right? So programming work, this is like the smaller exercises that I'll give. I'll usually give out a few little smaller programming exercises every week, at least maybe 1 or 2. And those are small. They're meant to sort of help you learn and then demonstrate to me understanding of like a specific concept. So I kind of design the assignment to make it so you have to do kind of one specific thing that we talked about and not like a whole bunch of stuff. But then other things like documentation and any kind of research I'm having you do, those are all kind of categorically referred to as an assignment. And all of the assignments, if you added up all those points in the entire class, they're worth 25% of your grade. Quizzes are short things. They're almost always multiple choice. And I'll be giving out 1 quiz per week usually. Sometimes it might be 2. Most of the time it'll probably be about 1 quiz a week. Every once in a while I might have a week where we don't have a quiz. And so in those situations, I'll try to let you know beforehand. But this is something that you can only do during lab time. You know, I mentioned that earlier. So at the beginning of our lab time every week on a Tuesday, we'll walk in and we will have a quiz for the first few minutes. They're very short. They're not meant to intimidate you. You might also notice on here that I don't have a midterm and I don't have a final because I think that between the projects and the quizzes, I get a pretty good feel for whether or not people understand the material. And I've noticed that not everybody particularly loves having midterms and finals. They can kind of, those big scary tests can be kind of rough on people's egos and then their grades even. So this is sort of my middle ground solution, and it also encourages you to come to lab where you can get help as well. And the quizzes almost always will be like you'll learn a new concept, and then the following week, not the week you got the work, but the following week you'll usually be a quiz on that concept. So you kind of, hopefully it'll be like a review of something you've already learned. Okay, and the last category is the Piazza post. So I mentioned what Piazza was already a few times. This is technically an online class, and there is ed code that actually dictates that I must have a graded component in my online classes that is devoted to participation in the class. And so this is just my easy way of dealing with that. And so based on what I've already told you about how Piazza works, it's a tool that lets you basically ask questions and answer questions and have discussions. I'm hoping that you'll just use the tool exactly for that purpose, and then you will just fulfill the requirement every week anyway. But the actual, and we'll talk about it more in a little bit, but the actual requirements for every week, you'll have at least one Piazza post assignment where I'm basically just going to see if in that week, did you post anything? Did you like ask questions? Did you answer questions? Or did you respond to a weekly discussion topic that I will post every week? Right. And as long as you did one of those three things and you actually participated in the class in that way, you'll get those points. If you added up all the Piazza posts for the entire class, that is 10% of your overall grade. Okay. And those are all of the percentages. If you're ever confused about how a weighted average grading system works, if that wasn't clear enough for you, I have a whole page here devoted to calculating your grade. I have a bunch of links on explaining a weighted average grading system. I also have a few links in there that tell you how to do what if grades in Canvas, which is a neat tool that you'll probably want to use as we get closer to the end of the semester, to sort of like kind of fill in like what would my grade be if I got this on the assignment, right? So it's a neat little tool they have in there. I outline how to do it in that page. Viewing your grades. All grades will be available to you in Canvas. Okay, so my goal is that you will be turning in all of your work, and I'm about to talk about this, the due dates, but after everything is due every week, which will be, for the most things, will be on Wednesdays. Thursday is usually like my grading day, and that's my goal is to have everything graded by the end of Thursday and posted in Canvas for you. And it doesn't really matter whether you did the work outside of Canvas. So for instance, when you're doing your Piazza posts, obviously that's not something that's in Canvas. I just take the grade that you get from Piazza and I push it into Canvas, right? So everything's in Canvas. That's where you go to see all your grades. Due dates. Okay, so you should have seen this in the email that came out, but I'm just going to emphasize it now. So I use a sort of modified schedule throughout the semester. So except for the first week, this first week will be weird. Okay, it's the only week that's like this. Every other week is different after this. After this, we get into a different kind of a schedule. First week is weird because it'd be weird for me to make things due on a Wednesday when you've only started school on Monday. But after this week, the way it'll work is every Thursday I will publish up a new module, right? That new module will have all of the stuff that you're going to be covering for the week, including a link to the new lecture where I talk about whatever it is that we're going to be doing that week. All of that stuff that is assigned on the Thursday will be due the following Wednesday, right? So everything becomes active at Thursday at like 12 a.m., right? It's the very beginning of the day. And then everything is for that week is due on Wednesday at midnight. Okay, or 11:59, pretty close, right? So that's sort of the normal cadence. The only thing that is different from that are the quizzes, right? And so for obvious reasons, I don't do quizzes. The quizzes I already mentioned, I only do those during lab. So those you'll only be able to do during the lab period. When you physically come into the lab and you actually sit down and I'm going to basically proctor your very short quiz that you'll do in the very beginning of the lab session. Okay, so that's just how our schedule works. All of the due dates are on Wednesdays. Almost all the work in the class you'll have a week to do. The only exceptions to that are the projects. So projects I almost always give you at least 2 weeks, if not a little bit more, to complete them because they're bigger and they are cumulative, and it'll give us more time to sort of talk about those concepts as a class. Okay. Oh, and I guess all of the times in Pacific time, in case I had somebody who was in a different time zone, I guess. Late work. So the most salient part of this whole blurb is this bit right here. I do not accept late work. It's because I'm a big mean guy who doesn't like late work. No, my main reason for doing this is because after, like I was saying before, the kind of the schedule we're on, everything will be due on Wednesdays, and then I sort of said, like, Thursday tends to be my grading day. I don't accept late work because not only do I post up the new materials on the Thursday every week, but the materials being like, what's due, but also my lecture. And oftentimes in my lecture, I will go through the actual solutions to a previous week's work. And it's occurring to me now that actually in this class, I don't know that I actually do that. Now that I'm thinking about it, I don't think I actually review any of it. I think for all of the work in this class, I actually post a separate video that I make available to you on that Thursday. So straight away, right, as soon as the due date has passed for the previous work, I post up walkthrough videos, which are basically solutions to all of the work that you should have just turned in, right? And I do this because I want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to learn from whatever it is they turned in. So even if you end up getting 100% on the assignment, right, you can watch the walkthrough video, and that video will show you like basically how I sort of expected, or one way I would about implementing the work. And sometimes that is, even if you get 100%, that still teaches you something, like a different way you could have done something, and you learn from that experience. And especially if you didn't do 100%, then that gives you a way to sort of close the gap on whatever the concept was that you were having a hard time with. Now you know what you did wrong, and that way when it comes up again, because it almost certainly will, you'll know how to tackle it, right? So I can't really do that though if I'm accepting late work all the time, right? So I make it kind of a line in the sand. Everything's due at a certain time, and then I post up those solution videos, and that way you can review it as many times as you'd like. I do have one little exception to this rule, of course, and that is if you have some sort of circumstance outside of your control that is basically, preventing you from getting work done on time, please let me know as soon as you possibly can. I get that I'm probably not the number one priority if like a major life thing happened to you, but the sooner you can let me know, the sooner I can try to make some kind of an accommodation so that you're not being punished for that. Because I don't think that you should be punished for, your house burning down or something that was a big thing in your life that was a problem. And those things do happen, of course. So my what I'm asking here is just let me know. I'm not a monster. I'm not going to punish you for that, but I do need to know about it. Okay, moving on to how to succeed. This is really just a list of advice that I'm giving you to hopefully be successful in this class. And my my assumption is that everybody wants to learn this material, and so if that is your goal, if your goal is to get smart with these computer science concepts, this is what I recommend you do to be successful in the class and to really learn the material. And I'm only going to do a few of these. I'm not going to walk through every single one, but the first maybe two or three are really important. Always watch the lectures. And I've already said it probably like 3 or 4 times, but again, it is the primary way I deliver all of the content. I don't deliver it any other way. So if you don't watch the lectures, I don't know how in the world you're going to get through this class. Like I just don't know how you're going to like learn the material really. So you have to learn, you have to watch those lectures and learn about what I'm talking about, but then also how I'm doing the work. That way you can sort of emulate that. Also make sure to always start the work as soon as it becomes available. Procrastination is probably a bad habit in any class you're in, but it is basically the kiss to death in these sorts of classes, in programming classes, because you almost certainly will run into problems. Like when you sit down, if you start the work literally like maybe the day it's due, and you're gonna like for the first time crack open the assignment and try to like read through it and then start writing your code and figuring it out, like you're almost certainly going to run into a bunch of problems. And whether those problems are like technical, or the interpreter's having a problem, or you don't understand the assignment directions or whatever, you've basically left yourself no time to get help, right? And you're almost certainly going to need help. And so if the sooner you start the work, the sooner you can run into those problems. You can post the questions in Piazza, you can come to my office hours, you can ask in lab, whatever it is you got to do. And that way you get that help and you have time to make sure you get it done before the due date. Because again, I don't accept late work, right? So this is really a big deal. Don't wait to the last minute to start doing the work. And then this one also, yeah, don't use AI to write code. And I'm going to talk more about this in a little bit, but I have basically a no AI policy on all of the assigned work in the class. Again, I'm going to delve into that here in a minute, but that is 100% my policy. So if you use AI on any portion of your assignment, I'll know. I have lots of ways of finding out, and you'll just get a zero. All right, and you're also not going to learn anything that way as well. So be sure to just do your own work. And then also, of course, yeah, read the grading rubric. I have a rubric for everything in the class. They tell you exactly how I'm going to uh, grade you and how you're being assessed, and also lets you kind of know what I think is the most important part of an assignment, because I'll make it worth more points than other parts, right? So you should always look at the grading rubric. It's like a big deal. And then the rest of these are, practice, ask questions, and don't give in the frustration. Right? It's a hard class. I try to make this a little easier. This is, in my opinion, this class is sort of like CSCI 20 or Programming and Algorithms 1 class. We cover a lot of the same material. I do try to go at a gentler pace. I give you more time. I'm a little bit more lenient on certain things. But it is still a hard class, right? These are still difficult concepts to master. And so um, you probably will get frustrated at some point. And I'm here to let you know that my goal is for you to be successful. So if you're trying hard and you're putting in the time and you're asking those questions, like I won't let you fail. If you're putting in the effort, like I will make sure that you understand it. That's my goal. That's my job. All right. So just don't give in to it. Get the help and then be successful. Um, there's also an alumni advice page that I have here. So at the end of the semester, I will put out a poll. So if you're still in the class at the end of the class, I'll ask for you to fill out a survey. And that survey, I ask for feedback about, like, what was good and bad about the class. But I also ask you if there's any advice that you would like to pass on to future students who are taking this class. And so I get all of those advice and I put them into one page, which is right here. And I call it the alumni advice page. And it is literally just a uncurated list of all of the advice that students who have literally taken this class, this exact same class, um, uh, as in your shoes, gave to you, a person who is now entering the class for the first time, in hopes that it will help you be successful in the class. And so this isn't even my advice. This is students who have taken this class before you. And so you have an assignment actually attached to this, so we'll talk more about it. But I encourage you to review it to get some ideas about how to do well in the class. Academic policies. College has a whole mess of them. In fact, again, they just updated their website, so you can go here and read all about the student conduct and rights and policies page. It's all right there in that page. Those are sort of the campus-wide policies, so good idea for you to know. That's not just for this class, that's like all of your classes. Okay, course academic integrity policy. So this is my policy about academic integrity for this class. And academic integrity, really what we're talking about is cheating. And so this is basically my policy on how I handle and deal with cheating, and basically what I qualify as cheating. Like, what do I mean when I say cheating? I already kind of mentioned it once, but the expectation is, again, you're not going to use AI. I don't have group work. There's no group work in the class, so everything you do will be individual assessments. And my expectation is that you are the one doing all of the work that you submit to me. When I look at a submission from you, my expectation is that I'm looking at your understanding of the material, and that is what allows me to grade whether or not you understand the material or not. That's like the whole reason for it. And so if anything that's not you is making contributions to that submission, then it kind of removes my ability to know whether you actually understand the material. Okay. So I kind of break it down into 3 categories of academic integrity violations. The first one is if you submit work to me that is identical or nearly identical to another student submission. This is commonly referred to as academic collusion. I'll move that over a little. There we go. And this is basically, it's kind of classic cheating, right? 2 people, maybe one person did the homework and they let somebody else copy off of them, and then they both submit it. honestly, I mean, this is a problem that has largely been solved in academia for a long time. There are so many tools. I didn't even have to invent these tools. These tools have just existed forever, that allow me to sort of just check to make sure that everybody's submission is unique from each other. So again, if you do this, you can expect both of the people who submitted the uh, those sorts of work will get a 0, and I'll let you know, hey, you got a 0 because these you guys colluded together. So don't do that. The other kind is basically if I get a submission that is identical or nearly identical to a previous student submission. So maybe you have a friend who took the class, a few semesters ago, and they still have some of their homework or whatever, and you're like, hey, I can't figure out this homework, and they're like, cool, here's my submission for it, and you're like, this is great, I'll submit that now. Okay, I'll know I have a repository of every single assignment I've ever gotten from a student. I run it through the same exact tools that I run for the collusion stuff. I find it pretty quickly. And if I find that, I'll let you know, hey, this is identical to somebody else's submission from a few semesters ago, and you'll get a 0. So don't do that either. The last one is really sort of the new kid on the block, and by far the most complicated one, I suppose, of all of my academic integrity issues, and that is the use of generative AI in the class. And so I just already got done saying how I have no AI is allowed to be used, and this is not like an all or nothing sort of thing. I know that some teachers are, every teacher at the college kind of has their own policy. So I'm just letting you know right now for this class, um, 0, no AI, not even partially. So I'm letting you know right now, if a submission appears to have even partially been generated by AI, the submission will receive an initial 0, and the student will be informed that they need to schedule a time with me in the week following when that assignment was turned in order for us to like talk about it. And so uh, I'll know. And I get that this might not be the case in maybe all of your classes, but more than any other instructor you're probably going to have for the immediate future, I have built systems that allow me to detect AI. Not to mention, I've just been coding for a really long time, and I can tell when a introduction to programming student submits AI generated stuff to me. They don't look anywhere near the same. They look very different. It's pretty easy for me to tell. And not to mention, I have also developed my own systems that just sort of go through and detect it against a bunch of algorithms anyway. So um, I know when you do this. So just don't do it. If you do again, you'll just get a 0, and then you'll have an opportunity to meet with me up to a week afterwards to talk about it. So if you submit work to me, I say, hey, this was generated by AI, and you're like, no, I didn't use AI at all. This is 100% something I wrote. Then you can meet with me during office hours. We can talk about it, and if you can kind of just like prove to me, hey, I didn't use AI and I understand every single thing that I did here, then I'll regrade it for you, right? And I'll just regrade whatever the submission was based on whatever you turned in. But if you don't, then again, it just stays as a 0. So that's sort of my policy on this. Doesn't come up a whole lot, but it does come up. And so we'll talk more about it, I'm sure, during the lab period about like, what is AI? And we are kind of reaching that point now where it's almost kind of hard to not use AI. Like you have to turn off a lot of things, and I'll show you how to do that in the class and in our code system. But just be aware that it is something you need to make sure that to be responsible for not using for our work. And actually, I know the risk of belaboring this too much. I also want to make sure I'm clear about that. I'm not like against AI in general. I use it a lot actually as a developer myself, and actually I think it's an amazing tool. And it's a tool, frankly, that if you continue to stay in computer science and becoming a software developer, you're going to be expected to know how to use it. Like it's not going to be like, oh, I don't really like to use AI. Like there's no one will hire you if you don't know how to use it. The reason I have a zero tolerance policy about it at this point, in your education, which is to say the very beginning, is because AI is kind of like a multiplier. If you already know something and you're already very knowledgeable about something, it can make you extremely productive. It's like having a really smart person to bounce ideas off of, right? It can be extremely useful and valuable to you as a as a productivity gainer, right? Because you already understand like how to do whatever the technical thing is. We're talking about programming here, but frankly, you could apply this to almost any kind of technical thing. It makes a technical person better because it allows them to have like a really smart person to bounce ideas off of. And if I'm smart enough to know when it gives me an idea and it's a bad idea, like then that's fine. Like I could talk to another smart person and they could also give me a bad idea, right? So in that way, it's great. But because you haven't been doing this at all, like this is probably your first time ever coding anything, you don't have a way to discern when it gives you bad ideas or it tells you things that you shouldn't do or it just has crazy notions about like the way that somebody should go about doing stuff. It is often going to give you bad advice. And if you don't have a way to discern that because you've never actually done the work yourself, then it's basically just doing you a disservice, right? So that's the reason I have to have such a sort of a harsh policy about it right now is it's not about it in a general sense. It's about what you're trying to do right now in this class. In this class, you are learning these fundamentals. And in order for you to learn it, you really need to not have something else like doing the thinking for you. Like you need to be the one doing the thinking. So that's sort of my philosophy on it. If you do any one of these three categories of academic integrity violations, then if you do it 3 times on the third attempt to submit something that's like this to me, at that point, from my perspective, like this is no longer just like a whoopsie sort of situation. Like this is like a pattern now. Like you're repeatedly doing it. You're repeatedly trying to cheat in my class. And so the first 2 attempts, you just get a 0. You get an email from me saying, hey, don't do that anymore. You don't do it. On the third one, at that point, I do have to start actually reporting it to the college. So on the third attempt of an academic integrity violation, I will submit a report to the college's disciplinary office, and then they will have further actions. Usually it's like an academic probation sort of thing. You don't want that. I don't want that. It's a bunch of paperwork. It's bad for everything. So just, don't do it. But recognize that this is my policy for when that happens. And I will do this. Like I hate doing it, but I will do it. Right. So please spare me the paperwork. Don't do it. All right. The attendance and withdrawal policy. It's an online class for the most part. So the way that I really check attendance really is whether you turned in work. That's kind of the main way that I check to see if people are really in the class or not. So uh, if you don't turn in half your work in a given week, my official policy is that from my perspective, that's you just telling me like I'm not really taking this class anymore, and I'll just drop you. Now, realistically, I'll probably only do that for the first couple of weeks, and that's because it's the first couple of weeks. People are trying to figure out if they're really going to stay in the class or not, and I don't like this guy's AI policy, and I'm not liking YouTube or whatever the reason is. I get it. Some people are just trying to figure stuff out in those first few weeks, and if you just kind of stop showing up and stop turning things in, I'll probably drop you. However, after that, from my perspective, like you've done a couple weeks, you know what the class is about, you get what my whole spiel is. Like you're an adult at that point. If you don't want to be in the class anymore, my expectation is that you would just drop yourself, and I'm probably going to stop like babysitting it on my own, up until maybe we get into like the halfway or like the 75% point. If you're still doing it at that point, eventually I probably will. But I do kind of want to treat everybody in the class like an adult. So you're here. This is not K-12. If you want to be here and you want to learn the material, I want to teach it to you. I want you to learn it. I want you to have fun doing it. But if that's not happening for you, you should drop the class then, right? All right. I don't want anyone to do that, by the way. Course accommodations. If you need an accommodation, please let me know. You can reach out to me through Canvas Inbox or my office hours, and I'll do whatever I can to accommodate you. You just gotta let me know. Student services. Again, the college has a huge number of services. I have a link to the page where they like list out a ton of them. I'm not going to go through all of that. I have a couple of services that I like to mention in my syllabus because I find them to be particularly helpful for students. One, of course, is the Center for Academic Success. That's CAS. If you're not familiar with what CAS is, it is free tutoring for everyone at the college. Okay, so it doesn't even matter what the discipline is. If they have a tutor over there who can teach it, then you have a tutor for free. The only thing you have to do is you have to enroll in their Edu 310 class, which is a free enrollment, doesn't cost you anything. I strongly encourage everyone in the class to go register for Edu 310 right now. Just go do it, right? It doesn't matter if you have no plans to go see a tutor for the rest of the semester, just enroll in it. And that way, when or if it pops up that you need it, you're there. You can just go pop in there and do it. I also have this link in our Canvas shell for CAS services. If you click on this, I think it opens up I think it's called like Penji or something like that. And it basically will let you, after you've registered for the class or for the Edu 310 class, it'll let you just like search for what tutors are available. I recommended some people from my previous semesters who were very strong students to be tutors. So I'm pretty sure this semester we have at least a couple computer science tutors in CAS, right? So like there are people there who can help you. Um, I I can't say enough good things about this. I was a tutor when I was an undergrad, so maybe that's why I have a special place in my heart for it. It's a fantastic service that the college offers. Go sign up. The other service that I like to promote here is the Student Health Clinic, and specifically that the college has a mental health service offering for you. So anybody who's enrolled in a 4 credit class, which is what this class is, and you've paid the student health fee, you are eligible for the Student Health Clinic and their mental health services. Lots of reasons why this might be something that somebody needs. Plenty of things going on in society at large and our communities. Don't suffer in silence. I like to let people know that this is a service that the college offers because I don't think that it gets promoted a lot for students. So just letting you know that service is available to you, and use it if you think that you could take advantage of it or if you think it would be beneficial to you. Okay, let's go on to the miscellaneous information. All right, so this is really just some boilerplate stuff that's letting you know this is where I put all of my, this is where the syllabus is. So it's always going to be in Canvas. On the off chance I ever have to change it, I will throw out an announcement letting you know. I can't even remember the last time I needed to do that. The pandemic. The pandemic was the last time I had to change my syllabus midway through the semester. That was the last time I think I ever had to do it. Um, Luke is our department chair. Here's how you reach out to him to complain about me. Oh, did I say that out loud? And actually, this is our department office. It's for the dean's office that oversees our area. So that's how you can contact them if you ever need to do so. Okay, we did it. We went through the whole syllabus. All right. So the next thing I wanted to do was just to jump over and give you kind of a quick walkthrough of what you're going to be doing specifically this week, but then also just kind of showcase the schedule for the coming weeks. So when you get into our Canvas shell, I mean, unless you want to go to the syllabus and read all that again, 9 times out of 10, you're going to be going over into modules. So modules is where I pretty much have everything for you set up. This is where pretty much how the whole class is organized inside of the modules. I have a module for every week that we're going to be doing stuff. The very first module I have at the top here is supplementary course information. These are basically just links to all those various things you saw inside of the syllabus. So the development environment setup. This is the link to that page. You're already watching my my lecture on YouTube, but if you're ever like, how do I get back to his channel? I have a page that shows you how to do that. The office hours, which I definitely need to update. The using Canvas, calculating your grade, alumni advice, they're all right here. Okay, so there's just kind of quick links for you if you need to get to that information again. This is the first thing that you're going to run into this week for the first week. That's going to be kind of like a little bit of a gatekeeper for me. So I'm going to say this right now. I'm sorry. I apologize in advance. I'm sorry. Okay, genuinely so. This is already, a fairly long lecture you're going to have to watch. I'm going to make you watch some more videos. Sorry, I'm sorry. Sorry I'm doing that to you. But there's some preliminary things I just sort of need you to know about, kind of like to make sure you're kind of on the same page for some of the tools we use and just sort of some general background knowledge about basic computer science stuff so we can kind of hit the ground running this week or this next week really. And so I put all that into the course overview module. So in this module, you will need to complete all of the things. In fact, I'll lower that down a little bit. Notice how it says complete all the items. You have to get a check mark on all of these items. Until you get a check mark on all of these items, you won't be able to access any of these subsequent modules. So notice how the work that's actually due this week is in the Lecture 1 module. You can't access it. Right now it's grayed out, and that's because I haven't completed everything in the course overview module. So you must get this done. 3 of these are videos, right? So again, I'm sorry. This is the only time in the whole semester I ever do this to you, where I make you just watch a ton of videos. After this, it's 1 video per week. It's my lecture. That's it, right? After this, that's it. But this week, lots of videos. I'm sorry. So the first video is the compilation interpretation process. It's just a basic overview of how compilation and interpretation works, basically how programs are made, okay? This is very fundamental knowledge. I'm not going to devote like a whole class period to lecturing about it. It's just something so that when I start talking it, when I say things like we're going to run the interpreter, I want you to know what I'm talking about. And so that's what this video kind of does a nice little overview for. Piazza overview video. This is that video I mentioned earlier that I'm going to make you watch that walks through the entirety of how Piazza is set up and how it works and how you can use it in the class. Okay, so you need to watch that. The command line interface for beginners. CLI is, you're going to see me using it starting next week all the time. This is literally how I run the programs that we build in the class. You're going to see me constantly using it. This is a walkthrough video that's meant to sort of gently introduce you to the idea of what a CLI is and how you can use it. Okay. You're going to need to watch all these videos. They are technically hosted in my YouTube channel, but you can't watch them there to fulfill these requirements. Instead, what you must do, pay attention, what you must do is you have to click on them inside of this course overview module. So I'm going to click on the very first one here. I'll click on that, okay? It's going to open up another page. In that page, this little thing is going to show up for you. You need to click on that. That's going to open up a new tab for you, okay? You're going to wait for it to load for a second here. Okay, now that it's loaded, you'll notice you're not technically in YouTube. You're in this thing called WeVideo, okay? What this is going to do is it's going to allow you to play the video, and you must watch the entire video. At certain points during the video will pause, and you will be prompted to answer questions about stuff that was just discussed in the video. This is my way of verifying that you actually understood and you were paying attention to the information in the video. Okay, that's why I'm doing it through this system. You cannot skip ahead. You can't just jump to the very end and be like, I'm done now. You have to watch the whole video. You need to answer all the questions correctly in order to get that check mark. Okay. One thing I do let you do, and if you hit play here, I'm just going to pause it immediately. Once you start playing it though, if in the bottom right corner here, you might notice this little settings thing. You can set this to double speed. Right, so you can play it faster. So I strongly encourage you to do that just so you can get through it faster. If you want to just play it at the normal speed, that's fine. You could even play it at a quarter speed. I'm not sure what would possess you to do that, but you could. But you do need to watch the whole thing and answer all the questions for all of the videos. Otherwise, you won't be able to unlock the next lecture. And this is a way for me to know who is serious about the class. Honestly, if I'm being perfectly honest about it, that is one of the ways that I know somebody is serious about taking this class is that they don't even bother to watch these videos. They never can even get to this. When we get to the end of the week and I'm like, wow, they haven't even started watching those videos. I don't think they're really taking my class, right? So that's just sort of a way for me to gauge that. So those are the 3 videos. The last one on this list is the course overview quiz. This is just a regular quiz. It's multiple choice and it goes over pretty much everything that you just saw me blab on and on about in the syllabus. So this is basically, you might as well just call this the syllabus overview quiz. All right. You have to get 100% on this quiz. You can take the quiz as many times as you like to get 100% on this quiz. Once you get 100%, you'll have the green check mark. So notice how on 4 out of the 5 items, I have a green check mark, but this top item, I don't. And that's why I can't do this. The top item is just the development environment setup page. So if you click on this from the course overview module, it'll take you to the development environment setup page. Again, this is just my way of saying hey, make sure you get your development environment set up. Once you have done that, I recommend going down to the bottom and checking this box. And that lets me know, hey, we're good there. And after you've done that, I go back to the modules here. You can see that now I have actually completed everything in the course overview module. So I have all green check marks, and see how it says all items are, there's a check mark here now as well. Well, I guess you can't see that. There's a check mark here as well. Okay, so that's letting me know I did everything. And now as soon as I did that, now look what happened. Now I can access the lecture 1 module. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Like, you have to get all that stuff done before you can access things. And again, I'm sorry. It's the only time in the whole semester I make you watch a ton of videos. Just suck it up, grab some popcorn, watch some videos, get through it. Okay, I know you can do this. Okay, the lecture 1 module, let's talk about this one. This is our first week. I mentioned already, it's a bit of a weird week. The normal schedule will be, I publish things on Thursday. They are due the following Wednesday. Thursday, Wednesday, Thursday, Wednesday, Thursday, Wednesday. Okay, that's what it's going to be for the whole semester, except for this week. This week is the one exception. This week, I obviously am assigning everything on the first day of class, which is I think the 17th, right? You have until Friday to get these assignments done, right? So this 1 week, everything is due on Friday, not Wednesday, because it would be kind of hard to get everything done in 2 days, okay? So there will be a little bit of overlap. This is the only week where there's any overlap, where technically some stuff will be due after the new stuff has been published. So stuff is going to get published on Thursday, which is the 20th, all right? And that'll be for the lecture 2 module. That's when this will unlock, right? But you will still technically have time to turn these in, okay? So all 3 of these are due by Friday. Okay, after that, everything will be due Wednesday, 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 Wednesday. That'll be the cadence we use after that. All right, let's talk about what actually is due on Friday. The first assignment is heed the advice. So let's go ahead and just open that guy up. And you can see here, heed the advice is that assignment I mentioned earlier that references the alumni advice page. And so really what this is I want you to go to that alumni advice page. Again, I have that open right here. I have a link to it in the assignment itself, so you can click on this, but this is the alumni advice page I mentioned earlier. And it just has a bunch of advice from previous students who have taken this class about how to be successful in the class. I want you to pick 2 distinct quotes from this list, 2 distinct quotes from this list, and I want you to write about why you picked those quotes and how you think that it might be helpful for you to be successful in the class. That's all I'm asking you to do. This also gives me an opportunity to talk about the grading rubric. So every assignment in the class has a grading rubric. So you can see right here, here is the grading rubric for this assignment. Okay, so here's the rubric. Rubrics are at the bottom of every page in Canvas. Okay, so an assignment page will have the directions for what I want you to do, right? And then right below that will be the rubric telling you like how I'm going to assess you for that assignment. This is 100 points right here. Okay, it's 100 points of 100-point assignment. Remember the categories of work. This is an assignment. And right off the bat, you can see you will get 10 points if you use the provided submission template. So I'm providing you a template. That's what this guy is right here. So don't just crack open whatever random text editor you have and start writing your answers in there. If you do that and you submit it to me and I don't have the template I gave you, then you're not going to get these 10 points, right? So I'm basically telling you how to get the work done, like what my expectation is for you. You download the template by clicking this little down arrow that will download it onto your computer, and then you can just open it up in Microsoft Word, and then you can edit the file. If you just click on the thing like this, if you just click on the name, it'll actually just open up like a viewing mode of it in Canvas. I can't actually edit this at all here. I can't like type anything here, right? This is just for viewing, right? But I can show you what the form looks like. Right, so you can see that there's, first thing I want you to do is put a quote here. So what I would want you to do is you would go through here, you'd find a quote that you like. So let's say I wanted to pick this quote. You really should just Control C, copy that quote here. I would copy it, right? And then you would be coming back in here and you would paste that right here, okay? Then you would come in here and you would explain to me, why did you pick that quote? So explain why you picked the quote and why you think it'll be useful to you in the class, right? Then I want you to pick a second quote, a distinct second quote. So when I say distinct, what I mean is it should be different than the first quote. Meaning if the first quote you did said, don't wait to do your homework in his class, it's bad to do that. And then you pick a different quote and they basically say like, oh, don't wait to turn in your homework. Those are talking about the same thing. Those are not distinct from each other. I want the piece of advice you get from one of them to be different than the other piece of advice you get. Okay, so pick two distinct pieces of advice. And then again, so I would come in here, I'd pick a different one here, watch the lectures. That's a great one. Copy that one in, paste it right here. Okay, and then explain to me why you picked that quote. All right, explain to me why you picked it. That's your homework for this week. That's the heed the advice of homework. You can look here and see that you get 10 points for just using the submission form. You get 20 points for actually listing the first quote. You get 20 points for the second quote, and you get 25 points for explaining the first quote and 25 points for explaining the second quote, right? Also showcasing that what I think is the most important. Clearly, 50% of this whole grade is just these two things right here, right? Half of the points are you explaining stuff to me. Clearly, I think that's the most useful thing. I value that more than the other two things, right? So it's kind of giving you some insight into like what I consider to be the most important stuff. You can use the rubric to help you kind of guide you on that. If you ever get to one of these grading rubrics and you see this little line and you're like, I don't really know what he means by that, that would be a good opportunity to actually click on the view longer description, and that will give you a more detailed description of what this criteria is talking about. So the submission references a direct quote from the alumni advice page for the first selected quote. Look at that, couldn't be more clear. This is saying that the actual submission has that component to it, right? You can do that for every single one of these. All right, so don't be afraid to ever click on these little longer descriptions if you're ever confused about what the actual requirement is that you're trying to meet. Okay. When you're ready to submit this one, you'll have a Word doc that you've filled out, from the template. You'll scroll down here to the bottom. You can just push this upload button, or you can literally drag it in here. That will upload your document into Canvas. Don't forget to actually push the submit assignment button. If you don't push this button, I will never see your submission, right? You have to actually click the submit assignment button for me to see the submission. Just uploading things does not let me see it. So just be wary of that. I know I've had students do that in the past. They're like, I turned it in. I'm like, well, it's not in Canvas and you're getting a 0 because I don't accept late work. All right, so don't be that student. Click submit. Okay, we'll head back over to module 1, or lecture 1 rather. Okay, second homework you have this week, Hello World. Okay, this is your first programming assignment. Okay, I put it in quotes there because really what this assignment is all about is you demonstrating to me that you've actually got your development environment setup page, or your development environment set up correctly. Okay, so I have a link to the development environment setup page again here. So however you did that, whether it was on your local computer or in CodeSpaces or whatever you did, all right, you have that set up. And then this is the one and only programming assignment the entire semester where I tell you exactly what to do step by step, right? And that's all you have to do. So you don't necessarily need to know what all of this means. You don't have to know what all of this code here means. We will talk about that next week. I 100% promise you that is what I'm going to do in my second lecture. All right. But for now, I just want you to demonstrate to me that you have gone through the process of actually writing your first program. Hello World is a very common one. So by the time you get done, you'll have a program that can spit out Hello World onto the terminal, and it'll say your name, right? And you'll just write your name. You'll delete this part, the underscore part, and you'll actually put your name there. And then this explains exactly how to run the code and then how to submit it. And again, you're going to do the same thing with the submission. You'll take your code file and you're going to upload it into Canvas. And that's what you're actually going to turn into me. Okay, so you're going to turn in a code file here. Again, make sure to hit the submit button. Okay, this is the only programming assignment that's like this. Again, here's a grading rubric. You can see that if as long as it runs without errors, you get 25 points, right? And then you get another 25 points for having the correct output. So this particular programming exercise is only worth 50 points, right? It's a 50-point assignment. Half of the points are just it not having errors and it having the correct output. Okay, I'll talk more about this next week, but the output definitely needs to match exactly what I'm telling you to do, right? So my expectation is that your output should look exactly like this, right? Except that this should say your name instead of your name. Right, it should actually have your name in there, right? So we'll talk more about that, my expectations for output, but for this week, just follow the directions. That's all I'm looking for, okay? We'll mosey on back over here. We're wrapping this up. Okay. The last homework assignment you have that is due on Friday, again on Friday, is your first Piazza post. Now, you should already have had access to Piazza. There should be an introduce yourself post that's already available. It's my weekly discussion topic for this one. So as long as you've gone in there and responded to that, you've met the requirement for this week. If you had other questions that you wanted to post, please, by all means, go ahead and post them in there. But I want to emphasize that, like, for this first week, that's really all I'm expecting you to necessarily post in there. Obviously, you're welcome to post as much as you like in there, but that's, if all you did was respond to the introduce yourself post, you've done a good job. If you click on it, this is going to be the same thing you see on every single Piazza post for the whole semester. It's the same exact text in here. And basically, it's just telling you, hey, for the week, did you ask a question about the material? Did you answer questions about the material? Did you respond to my weekly discussion topic? If you did one of those three things, then you likely have met the requirement, okay? In general, a paragraph's worth of posting will meet the requirement. So I'm pointing this out that, like, if you go into Piazza and you're trying to meet this requirement for a week and somebody posts a question, they're like, I'm having a hard time with something, right? And then you go in and you respond with, me too, right? That's not participation. That's just you making a comment in like 2 words, I guess, right? So that's not real participation. I'm actually looking for substantive posts that actually demonstrate real participation in the class. All right, and so this is me defining for you what that looks like. So I think of a substantive post as basically a paragraph or so, and a paragraph in my mind is roughly 3 or 4 sentences length. Okay, it's not literally just like sounds good, right? That's not participating. That's just you. I don't know. It might as well just be like one of those like emoji thumbs up emojis or something, right? Like that's not really participating. That's just you saying hi, I guess. I go through it in the Piazza video that you're going to watch, but you can make private posts in Piazza, and you're welcome to do that. If you make a private post, I'm the only one who can see those kinds of posts. However, if you do, they won't count towards meeting this requirement. Right? So I'm not saying you can't make a private post, but just recognize if that's the only thing you do in the week is make a private post, you will not have met the Piazza post requirement for the week. And you'll get 0 points for that week. Right? So I'm looking for you to participate with the class, not just with me. I only count the posts that happen between when the new module was up, went up until it was due. So for this first week, it'll be between Monday and Friday. All right. And when the second, and after that, after we get after this first week, it'll be the new module gets published on a Thursday. The work is due on Wednesday. Anything that happened in between is what I'm counting for the Piazza post. Okay. I don't know if I mentioned it. I think I certainly do in the video, but just as a reminder, you can actually post things in Piazza anonymously. So don't worry about making posts that you're like, oh, everyone will think I'm dumb. You can post every single thing you want in the class anonymously if you want. The only person who will know who made the post is me, and I'm not going to tell anybody who posted it. Okay. So please, I'm just sort of another attempt here, just sort of begging people, you're going to want to use Piazza. It's a great tool for that. And I'm hoping people will jump on board. Okay, I think that's it for this week and all of the stuff I want to talk about. I'm very excited to have you in the class. I'm looking forward to meeting everybody on Tuesday. But please go ahead and jump in now. I know that if you're watching this video before the official start of the semester, you won't have access to Canvas, but you certainly can still set up your Piazza account. And you can certainly, watch the video and get a sense of what you're going to end up needing to do before the class starts. So I'm looking forward to meeting you all again. And until then, till the next video, have a good one.